hello, and welcome back to your spiritual upgrade. I am so excited to be here and having a little chat with you. This is episode 141, which is wild. And I am starting to put these up on YouTube for the first time ever, 140 episodes later. The first episode on YouTube was episode 140, my big why I do this work. So if you want to see my face while I'm chatting to you, you can now. And that's exciting. And I used to just love doing these podcasts, looking not so good. And I probably will continue to not try super hard to look fabulous when I record these podcasts. But it does put a little bit more pressure on me to not just be in my PJs with a big bun on top of my head. But I've kind of lost a lot of care and worry about how I look online because it doesn't really matter. What matters is the message. And oftentimes my best thoughts come through first thing in the morning when my face is all squished from sleeping and I'm not looking at 10 out of 10, and that's okay. I think it's authentic to show up in all ways when inspiration strikes and when you feel like there's something that needs to come out of you. So as mentioned last week, I am doing a little reintroduction podcast episode because I literally have not done one since my very first episode 1, which would be really interesting to go back and listen to that. I'm sure it would actually be a little bit cringe. I was going to see if I could find it. I'm pulling out my phone right now. Let's see if I can find episode 1 and find out the exact date of that podcast because, okay, so it was November 1st, 2023, which is so interesting. It was November 1st, 2023, because I literally got laid off on Halloween, like the day before, the day before my first episode went live. So that's pretty wild. I didn't realize that those things happen so closely together. So it's been over 2 years, almost 3 years, and it's time. It's time to tell my story from the beginning. For those of you who are new, for those of you who have been listening for a long time, you're going to hear my story from the version of myself that I am now. And so the story might be told in a little bit of a different way. And I just know so many people are new here. We hit 10,000 downloads not that long ago, like a month ago, which is super exciting. And I just know there are a lot of new people here who maybe haven't listened to episode 1. So I just got back actually an hour and a half ago from the hometown where I grew up. I was actually born in Fargo, North Dakota. Yes, there's a TV show called Fargo. I've actually never seen it. People say it's really good though. Let me know your thoughts if you think it's a good show. And when I was two and a half, we moved to Park Rapids, Minnesota, which is a very small town in northern Minnesota with a population of about 3,000 people. At least it was that when I was growing up. And in the summertime, it triples because there are so many cabins there. It's a lake country, so lots of lakes. It's very beautiful in the summer and in the fall, but it gets very, very, very cold in the winter. Long, frigid winters there. And I grew up with a very lovely family. My mom and dad were both very into their jobs. They both grew up in families where they had to figure it out on their own. My mom's parents got divorced, which created a lot of financial strain for my grandma. And so she learned at a young age that she was going to create her own way in the world and not be dependent on a man. My dad was the first one in his family to attend college and grew up more in the arts, very artistic, very creative person, and then ended up getting into business and specifically into sales. He sold textbooks. My mom was a dietitian and ran the kitchen at the hospital and helped people with diabetes. And so she had a very strong health focus. My dad also used to be a chef. My dad is a manifesting generator. My mom is a generator, looking at it from the human design lens. And now that I know what that means, they are so that. Like, my mom is such a pure generator and my dad is such a man gen. And it's so funny now that I can see them through that. And I have one older brother. He is 2.5 years older than me. And he's actually also a projector like myself. And he's very artsy and nerdy and musical. And he's really cool, really into cool music and all that. So anyway, I grew up in a small town and it was safe. It was comfortable. It was a time where we could go out and ride our bikes in the neighborhood. And it was just a different time. There wasn't social media yet, and it was a simple time. But as I got older, I realized how small that town was in terms of its thinking. And so I grew up going to a Lutheran church every single Sunday. My mom has a very religious foundation. She's actually quite spiritual as well. She's a very wise, spiritual Pisces woman. But her faith and the Lutheran tradition specifically gave her a lot of groundedness. But I, growing up, going to that church, always felt really out of place. I always felt like it didn't make a lot of sense. I was a very curious child, and my 3-5, if you know human design, was clear from a young age. I was very curious, very experimental, very much wanting to try new things. And growing up in that town and going to church, I hated it, honestly. My brother and I would fight on the way to church every single Sunday. It was boring. For me, the best part about church was the socialization. It was Sunday school. It was seeing my friends and being part of the different activities there. But that is where I think the spiritual seed got planted, not in the way of loving church and loving those rituals and practices, but questioning things and seeing that there must be a bigger picture there. And then add to that, I was one who wanted to hang out with the boys and wanted to go to the parties. And I was definitely more of a rebellious spirit. And I also was athletic. I was a swimmer. I was a runner. I was into sports. Got my first boyfriend when I was 12 years old. I'm pretty sure he reached out to me on like MSN Messenger, and he became somebody that I ended up being in an on and off, really powerful, deep, important relationship, really from the ages of 12 until 19. And there's some space in between there, but that was a really significant part of my upbringing. And then piece where things really change and where I really feel like my story and my journey starts, and the story I tell at retreats and that I think people are like, ooh, whoa, tell me more, is that when I was 16, I ended up going to juvie. And it was because I was this precocious child who was rebellious and felt kind of small and stuck in that small town. And also we had grown up, my parents took us to New York and Chicago and Disney World. We were very fortunate to be able to see outside of that small town. So I just knew there was more out there for me. And so when I went to juvie, it was very scary. And I always say it was one of the worst things that ever happened to me and one of the best things that ever happened to me. And I ended up going to juvie because I technically ran away, meaning I didn't come home for, I think it was 72 hours. And I actually did go home at 72 hours because I knew that was the rule, actually. And other kids had gone to juvie for running away. But my parents knew the cop who actually arrested me. She lived in our neighborhood, and I was actually friends with her twin daughters, Megan and Mindy. And they, so she arrested me when I was 16, and there was actually no room in the juvie. And so I had to stay in the adult jail, like a solitary cell. And then there was room for me, I don't know, like the next morning, or I don't know, they had to like create space. And then when I got there, it was so surreal. Like you have to strip down and they check you and you have to take your toenail polish off. And that trip to juvie changed everything for me. And it wasn't like I went to juvie and suddenly decided, oh, I'm going to clean up my act and I'm never going to smoke marijuana again. And I'm just going to go to church and be this perfect angel. It was actually what happened at juvie is I had my first experience of gratitude. And I saw all these kids in juvie who would rather be in juvie than be with their parents. And so I realized like, oh, wow, I actually have it really good. And my parents visited me every single day in juvie. I remember they brought me KFC, Kentucky Fried Chicken. They brought me journals and they just wanted to show me that they loved me and that they were doing it out of love. But I couldn't go on that way because I was going down a bit of a dark path. And so I, thank God, had the awareness to say, oh, wow, I need to shape up and be nicer to my parents and be thankful for what I have. And I got out of juvie and decided, okay, I'm going to shift my relationship with my parents. And unfortunate thing is, for whatever reason, a rule in that town that I grew up in, Park Rapids, is that if you go to juvie, or I think I had a couple different offenses, you get kicked out of all school sports, which by the way is the dumbest punishment because what else is there to do in that small town except sports and getting into trouble? So I was kicked out of sports and I was invited, or I found, I don't know how it came to be, the one yoga class offered once a week in the small town. It was at this place called Bridget's House, which was like a new age metaphysical store. It was in this really cute house and they had a yoga studio upstairs. And it wasn't like yoga is now. It was like women my mom's age or older who did yoga with my instructor, Cynthia, sweetest woman. And I just loved it. It was literally like coming home. And I really do believe in simultaneous / past lives. And I've certainly done yoga in other realities and time frames. And I just remember doing the movements and doing the postures and feeling so good in my body. And I'm telling you, it was the first or second class. I remember we did half moon pose. And it was kind of hard for the other ladies there, but I was young and agile. And I remember I got into half moon pose and nailed it and held it. And this feeling washed over me of I meant to be a yoga teacher. Like I just knew it. It was just such a clear, I can see it now. I can put myself back in that studio literally as I'm telling you this story. And I was like, I am meant to be a yoga teacher. And so I continued to go to that class, and that teacher actually gave me a stack of yoga DVDs because the class was only offered once a week. And I wanted more yoga. I loved it. She's like, try these other types of yoga. There was like an Iyengar video and maybe an Ashtanga video, and there was a Kundalini Yoga video. And I remember doing that in my parents' basement, and then at my boyfriend at the time, his name is Cole, and I would do it in his mom's living room. And I remember doing this Kundalini yoga video and I was like, whoa, like this is different. Like I've done yoga, but this is a totally different kind of yoga, and loving it and feeling really alive, and the music and the energy and it was really physical. It was really active. I loved it. And as time went on, I ended up deciding, or, co-deciding with my parents that I would, after high school, go to a community college, but also get certified to teach yoga at the same time because I just knew that's what I wanted to do. And so I found a yoga teacher training program in Minneapolis, which is where I'm recording this episode right now, and would do that and then go to college and do both, because yoga teacher training, I think, was on the weekends. And that's where I really started my yoga journey. And then I moved to Minneapolis, or I moved to Bloomington, which is a suburb of Minneapolis, with a bunch of people from high school. And we all lived in this, it was a 3-bedroom apartment, and there was 5 of us living there, and 5 or 6 of us living in that house. And that is when my boyfriend, who I had been with for a really long time, we ended up breaking up, which was so hard because we lived together in this house was a house with all these people, and it was really challenging. It was one of those things where we needed to break up and go live our separate lives. We couldn't just continue from what we'd always been in high school, but there was still so much love there and so much history there, and it was a little bit messy. And so the summer after that first year of community college, and I believe I had graduated yoga teacher training at that point. I went back home to Park Rapids to live with my parents for the summer and work at the coffee shop that I had worked at in high school. Because actually, after I got kicked out of juvie, this is a side note, or actually, when I got back from juvie, I was able to be in this like work study program. So at lunch, I took classes in the morning and then left the school and went and worked at the coffee shop and got credit for it, which was amazing because the last place I wanted to be was high school. So anyway, so after that first year of community college, getting my yoga teacher training certification, I'm in my hometown, I'm working at this coffee shop, I'm going through this breakup, and I end up getting really into hula hooping. And I was kind of a festival girl, your stoner, hippie girl. And I had gotten into hula hooping while I was with this guy. But when we broke up, I hula hooped every single day for hours in my parents' yard. I would put on music and just hula hoop like crazy, and I was learning different tricks and different movements, and then I eventually started making the hula hoops and selling the hula hoops and teaching other people in my hometown how to hula hoop. And I started doing fire hula hooping, and I got hired to start doing birthday parties, and it became really my first kind of legit business. I was literally selling hula hoops out of the coffee shop and teaching people. Our main street is a main street where you could like cruise Main and do laps around Main Street, and people would park at the end of Main Street and chat and like talk about where the party was at. And I would bring my hula hoops out there and turn up the music in my car and hula hoop, and I started to make money. And that's when my dad, who, like I said, grew up was a salesman, he was like, "You have a knack for business. You have a knack for entrepreneurship. Like there's something here." And so I went back, finished community college, and I had to figure out sort of during that time, where am I going to get my degree from? Because I did community college to sort of get the basic curriculum, general curriculum done. And then I had to figure out, okay, what do I want to get a degree in? I just wanted to be a yoga teacher, I love that because it shows how I just knew. I always knew, and I needed to take a lot of detours, and it all comes together and I'll get there, but I just knew I'm going to be a yoga teacher. And maybe this is a moment for you to pause and think back, especially if you're someone who's found yourself in a job or in a position doing something you don't really want to do. Maybe you actually have always known what you wanted to do and you're going to circle back to it somehow. So I didn't exactly know what I wanted to get a degree in. I just wanted to continue in the yoga industry and the wellness industry. My dad's like, "Well, you should pursue this sales program at this school called St. Kate's here in St. Paul, Minnesota." And so I ended up getting into a business to business sales program for women. It was at an all women's college, and I never lived on campus. I just commuted, and I worked at different yoga studios, and I was teaching bar at the time too, more like your fitness studio, bar studio, and going to school. And then what ended up happening is, for that degree, I had to have a paid internship. And I remember my plan was to create my own internship with the yoga studio that I was teaching at, because I knew that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I was going to be a yoga teacher. I was going to work at yoga studios. That's what I wanted to do. But my advisor at the time said, "You should apply for this internship. It's a very coveted sales internship with this Fortune 500 company, and just do it for practice." So I did. I applied for the internship. I got an interview. And I remember during that interview, they were asking me a bunch of questions, as one does on an interview. And I talked about business and sales from the lens of my hula hooping company. And they were laughing and thought I was so funny and interesting because I was, let's be honest. I probably had a very different story than a lot of other people in there. And I got the internship. And it was so crazy because I didn't really want it. It wasn't on my radar. It's like an industrial company. The company's called 3M. You probably know what it is. They invented the Post-it note. And so I get this internship and they flew me out to Southern California, Orange County, to work in a division for car care products called Meguiar's, which was awesome. Like I got a company car. They put me up in an apartment I remember it had a pool and of course palm trees. And it's so interesting. That would have been 2014, 2015, which was the last time I had my Jupiter return. Like Jupiter, it just moved into Leo in the first house, which is very fortunate. So I'm really excited to see what the next year brings because this is really good astrological alignment for me. And when I think back to, okay, when this was happening in my chart last, this happened. This literally happened in my life. It was totally unexpected, massive opportunity, huge up level. I got paid very well, but it was my first taste of being in a job that didn't really feel like me. I got all these amazing things and all these amazing perks, and I'm so grateful for that opportunity. But I remember sitting in the office and figuring out what my day-to-day was going to look like, selling car care products and going to car shows and learning how to clean a car and the whole thing. And it did not feel aligned. It did not feel like when I was in the front of a yoga class guiding people into their breath and into their bodies. And they offered me a position to stay in California, but I was dating a different person at this time. And our relationship seemed to be going somewhere at the time. And so I ended up taking an inside sales position back in Minnesota. That is a little bit of a regret. I mean, everything turns out as it's meant to, but I kind of wish I wouldn't have gotten sucked into that relationship and taken the opportunity to work in California because it could have been really fun and unique and interesting and an opportunity to live somewhere awesome. And it wasn't meant to be. So I end up back in Minneapolis, uptown Minneapolis, working at the studio, commuting out to do this inside sales job, selling tape and glue. And very quickly I realized this cannot be my life. I do not want to be doing this. This is soul sucking. This is not me. I'm sitting in a cubicle with a headset and I was making really good money. And I actually signed a signing bonus and it was like 10 or 15 or $20,000. It was like a large sum of money, especially at that age. I was just fresh out of college, that if I quit this job before 2 or 3 years, again, I don't remember the specifics, then I would owe them that. I think it was $10,000. I would owe them $10,000 back. And I didn't want to do that. So I agreed that I was going to stick it out, but it was very hard. And I remember wanting to work from home because it was such a long commute and I hated sitting in the office. And I started advocating to work from home before this was really a thing. And I pulled this report and all these statistics and all these reasons why I should be able to work from home and why I would be more productive and why it was more environmentally friendly and all these things. And I remember my boss at the time said no. And I was so frustrated. I felt so trapped. And this is when I got really into coaching and Abraham Hicks, law of attraction. I had been really into spirituality and Hinduism and Buddhism and consciousness and psychedelics and all those things in high school with that first boyfriend. Like we were very much on like a spiritual journey, very much fueled by Mary Jane, if you will. And, we were kind of like hippies, stoners, but this new phase of my life was rediscovering these things more from the lens of I'm in this miserable job, but I'm going to fulfill the commitment and I have to figure out how to enjoy my life here because this is my life. Because I had been like calling my mom every single day on the way home from work. And I was so soul sucking. I hated the work, and I was really good at it and everybody liked me there, but it didn't fill me up. It felt like I was dying a little bit every day. But the benefit of that and the beauty in that is that's when I found self-development. I remember I signed up for my first group coaching program and started a website and started a newsletter that was called Wake Up Wednesday with Greta. And I wrote it every single Wednesday because I was so good at that job. And I quickly realized that in corporate America and as a projector, you can get your work done in a very short period of time if you focus. And so I had a lot of time sitting at my desk where I didn't need to just keep working and working and working. And so I used some of that time. And it was cool because that company at the time was like, they believed in this 10% project, which is you should take 10% of your time and put it into something different than what your work is because it's good for your brain and it actually makes you a more productive employee in your actual job. And so I was like, okay, well, I'm going to use that 10%. And it was probably a little bit more to build my business. And I didn't really know what I was doing at the time, but I had been exposed to the coaching industry and self-development and Tim Ferriss and the 4-Hour Work Week and some of these ways that people were creating time freedom and wealth by creating businesses that gave them that opportunity. Meanwhile, I'm also teaching yoga, teaching bar at a studio in Uptown, which is the neighborhood that I lived. So I would go to work and then I would teach because that filled my cup and I loved it so much. It wasn't really for the money. It was just like I loved it. I needed to keep teaching. This is just who I've been the whole time. And so what ends up happening is I'm learning a lot about entrepreneurship through Tim Ferriss. I remember walking the big facility where I worked, and there was all these different buildings that connected it, and you could walk this lap, and it was a certain amount of laps was a mile. And I would just, every time I could take a little break or a lunch, I would just walk and walk and walk, and I would listen on my headphones to the 4-Hour Work Week. And that gave me so much inspiration to create something of my own. And so much of entrepreneurship is about looking for the gaps, looking where your skill sets and your passions meet a gap in the marketplace or an opportunity in the marketplace. And I had been working at these yoga studios and saw that they didn't really understand the business side of things, newsletters, social media. Instagram was really new at the time, Facebook marketing. And so I offered my services to do social media marketing for the yoga studio. And I ended up having sort of a side manager job role while, again, I'm just doing the inside sales job. I'm selling the tape and the glue. And that was just my job. Well, I'm shifting my mindset. I'm sort of like becoming a better, brighter, more positive version of myself. They let me work from home, I think 2 or 3 days a week. And it became a space thing where I ended up sharing a desk with somebody. I'm like, totally fine with me. And I built this side business doing social media and marketing for fitness studios, wellness studios. I worked with chiropractors, acupuncturists, yoga studio owners, lots of different people. And I ended up hiring my cousin who did graphic design. I hired a girl who did newsletters. I hired like kind of different account managers, and that business started to make money. And it was just so fun to create something that was making money, I was passionate about, that was helping me network and create a name for myself in Minneapolis. And then what ended up happening is a lot of things happened. I ended up dating a guy at the company who was cheating on me, and it was like super embarrassing. And then I ended up getting a phone call from this guy who was trying to recruit me to a company called Tosox, which I remember getting that invitation on LinkedIn. And I was like, this cannot be real. He was like, this is a sales opportunity. You'll be calling on yoga studios, bar studios, Pilates studios. You'll be like working in the middle of the country, traveling. It's for a company based in San Diego. I'm like, this cannot be real. But I was intrigued and I was excited because it was sales and the compensation was aligned. And the guy who was recruiting me was like, well, you need to talk to this girl, Rosie. She has your job, but she covers the East Coast. Well, I ended up getting on the phone with Rosie, who's my now Radiance Retreats business partner. We literally run retreats together. We just finished our 7th retreat in Portugal. We're now totally international. And she called me and she's like, "You need to come work for us. Like, you got to come over." And I remember I was like, "Okay, well, you need to pay for me to come out to San Diego and I need to see what this is all about and then we'll talk." And I did, and I ended up taking the job, and it was amazing at first. And I actually stopped my social media and marketing company. I stopped sending my Wake Up Wednesday with Greta newsletter, which I had done for at least 2 years at that point. And I was like, this job is it. Like, it's business, it's fashion, it's wellness, it's yoga, it's San Diego. It's like all these things that told me I had made it. Like, I don't need to have my side hustle. I don't need to do my own thing on the side anymore. I have it all right here. And it was amazing at first. It was one of those jobs that was so cool because I was working for a company based in San Diego. Like I said, there was fashion and travel, and I was single at the time. And this is a time period where I went on my first yoga retreat by myself in Nicaragua, which was so life-changing, and I felt so independent. And then that job got very stressful. It was essentially a startup company, and the goals were very aggressive, and I was traveling a lot. And while it checked a lot of boxes and it was a good fit for me in a lot of ways, I had stopped teaching yoga. I didn't really have a sense of community. I was gone so much. I didn't really have the ability to be in a long-term relationship, and I was dating a lot of people out on the road and kind of going on dates when I'd be in Chicago or in Denver. And I sort of lost myself. I ended up becoming addicted to stimulants, specifically Adderall, which was just helping me to get the job done and feel like superwoman and be super productive. And I was often alone working in my own apartment, and the goals were just so big. And as a high achiever and somebody who wants to perform and be the best, it was a lot to keep up with. And I started going down a dark path of, taking Adderall and then drinking and then taking pills to go to sleep and smoking weed. And like, I really lost myself in the chase, in the hustle, in the job. And it was fun. And there were parts of that chapter that were really cool. And on the outside, I wasn't really like, nobody would have known that I was going down a dark path. I mean, maybe people who really knew me could start to see this girl is stressed and that maybe I look tired. Like, I don't really know. I can't see myself through the eyes of like anybody but myself, of course. But I knew deep down I was not truly happy. And I went to therapy for the first time, mostly because I was really struggling with my sense of self-worth and dating all these guys who were treating me really poorly. And I started to have a lot of anxiety. I was starting to have panic attacks on the side of the road, which was my body saying, you got to get out of this job. This is no longer working for you. And I basically made the decision that I need to turn my life around. And so I was very addicted to this cycle of taking Adderall to wake up and being super productive, and then to come down, going out for drinks, smoking weed, taking some sort of sleeping medication, and then being all groggy the next morning, taking the Adderall. And just I was on this hamster wheel. And it in a lot of ways was maybe okay because I was hitting my goals and I was making money and I had friends and all of these things going for me, but I knew I needed to stop. And a few things needed to happen. I needed to get off the Adderall and I needed to get a new job, and those things needed to happen together. And so I remember I had started subbing yoga classes at this yoga studio called The Firm that is no longer open, sadly. And just because I needed to tap back into community and teaching yoga and something that I really loved. And that subbing quickly turned into, oh, you have your own class on the schedule now because somebody had quit or needed to move on or their schedule changed. And the woman who was managing that gym at the time told me that there was a potential sales position opening up. And that made my ears perk right up. And she's like, I think you would be a perfect fit. And so while I'm working the toe socks job out on the road traveling, I was simultaneously working with the owners of this gym to figure out this sales position. And it was a very long process of several interviews, and because they'd never hired somebody for this position before. And I had been making a lot more money in the toe socks job and they couldn't pay me as much. but I had to weigh out the benefit of being home, and I had started dating my now husband, Aaron. And so I was willing to take a pay cut because I couldn't continue in this job. I just couldn't. It was literally killing me. And so eventually we made an agreement. I was offered the job. I put in my notice at toe socks. I actually left my sock suitcase at the Denver airport. I had had just like a week from hell where so many things went wrong, and I was late for my flight, and I had the option to either check in that sock suitcase and miss my flight or make the flight and go home. And I remember I just left the suitcase in the check-in area at the airport and went and took my flight. And I was like, I'm never going to use it again. It's done. Rest in peace, sock suitcase. Who knows what happened to it? But and I was also trying to get off Adderall at the same time. And I had been trying everything, like the therapy, recovery programs. I did transcendental meditation training, like so many different things, books, trying to quit cold turkey, flushing it down the toilet, like so many different things. And the only thing that ended up helping me was Kundalini Yoga. I ended up rediscovering Kundalini Yoga. I think some girl had mentioned it in a book or something. I don't even know. I do not even know. But I did it again. And I'm pretty sure I found the same video that I did back when I was 16. And once again, I had that feeling of like, yes, this is something. This is moving me. This is coming home to myself. Like truly, I know that sounds a little cliche and like ChatGPT, but that's it. It's like you come home to you. And I remember I did the Kundalini, and that day I didn't take the Adderall. I was like, oh, I can do this. I got this. Like I feel energized. I feel connected. I don't need it. And that is what eventually like truly saved my life. And then, I was actually between jobs. This is the timeline. So I was between jobs. I was between going to work full time at the gym doing sales and marketing and the toe socks sales job. And Aaron and I were going to take a trip to Florida to visit his sister. It's in April. It's still shitty in Minnesota. And our flight to Florida got canceled twice. Literally went to the airport, left to go home, went to the airport the next day, canceled both times. And I was like, I got to get out of this winter weather. I want to take a trip. We ended up in LA, and actually another invitation. It's been so many invitations. When I look back, it's like, oh yes, the projector thing is true. My whole life has been a series of invitations. And I got invited to a Kundalini class in LA by my friend Alyssa, who like didn't even go to the studio. She's just like, you should go. My friend Janelle or something really likes it. And I went to that class taught by a woman named Tej. If you know, you know. And it absolutely changed my life. I felt the Kundalini energy, the community. I was completely elevated. I actually had laryngitis at the time. Like I couldn't even talk, and it was like a total chanting class. I think we chanted Ramadasa. But I just knew I was like, I am meant to teach Kundalini. It was sort of like that class back when I was 16. I've actually never made the connection, but it was very much that. It was like, oh, I meant to teach this. Knew basically nothing about Guru Jagat or the studio, but I saw they were doing a teacher training. And then I literally get my brand new job at this gym. And I was like, oh, and by the way, I'm going to be going to Los Angeles, for 3 weeks over the next 3 months or whatever it was. He would like go for a week and do really rigorous training, come home, go back to LA, come home, go back. And I mean, they didn't really have any choice but to agree. And I ended up getting Kundalini teacher training in 2019, I fully graduated from the teacher training program in 2020, January of 2020. Last time they ever did that teacher training before the world closed down to COVID. Truly saved my life. I mean, I don't even know what kind of mess I would have gotten into had I not been like so into my Kundalini right before COVID took off. And it saved my life. And it became the thing that I knew I was meant to do. I was meant to teach. I was meant to share. And then COVID hit. Of course, the fitness industry, the gyms struggled. They had to shut down. And so it was 3 very tough years between 2020 and 2023 when the gym finally closed, of feeling pretty insecure in my job. And when you talk about your Saturn return, I got engaged, and that was a big part of my Saturn return. But I think the biggest growing up wake up call, Saturn big daddy slap that I got was that time period of feeling like my job was very insecure. And so it was so hard working for that gym and being in Minneapolis, which went through so much struggle during COVID. And I just knew that I have to have something else figured out because this job just doesn't feel totally safe. And because the Kundalini Yoga had been changing my life so much, it literally saved me from the path I was going down. It had given me so much energy and purpose and vitality and meaning and energy. And just, it gave me power. It gave me peace. It gave me just intentional living and the mantras and the breath work and the vitality. And Aaron always talks about it. It's like my arrow pointing clearly in a direction, which not a lot of people have. That is what the Kundalini gave me. And it gave me, and I got that during a really important time, which was COVID, where I think a lot of people, went dark, things, and I think people are still recovering from some of the behaviors that they picked up during COVID, but we got the Kundalini. And so I created my first one-on-one coaching program, Happy Habits. That's what it was called. It was a 3-month program. And I was also working with coaches during the time I was doing the Kundalini. I was enrolled in a coaching program because I knew I had to create my own safety net. And I kind of came back to what I really knew back when I was 16. And I said, hey, I don't need to go to college. I just want to become a yoga teacher and open a yoga studio. Like, I'm meant to be in the yoga business. I found myself there again where I was like, yeah, I could go find another sales job, but what I really want to do is my own thing. What I really want to do is be an entrepreneur. And this is it. It's now or never. And I can either like get laid off and jump right into the whole same pattern and rigmarole, or I can take a big leap of faith here and go all in on me and my dream and my vision. And it was really scary and it was really hard, but I got laid off on Halloween was my last day. And then Halloween of 2023. And then in November of 2024, I ended up, wait, am I right on timing here? Yeah. And then November 2023, I was like, November's not in, no, November is, we don't start 2024 until January. So November of 2023, I hosted my first retreat actually was that previous, it was called Radiance Retreat. My very first retreat was actually in Minneapolis. It was called Radiance Retreat. But my very first retreat with Rosie outside of Minneapolis was in Sedona. We completely sold out. And I had a few coaching clients at the time, and some people from that retreat became coaching clients. And then that's it. I went all in on my business. And the journey of 2024 was me building my business, building my one-on-one client roster, continuing to host retreats. And then I ended up expanding to group coaching and also offering business coaching in 2025. Started my first group program for coaches, my highest self mastermind. I created the Kundalini Yoga course. I think that was in 2024. And I think my first year in business was like $150,000 year. And my second full-time year in business was a $260,000 year. And it's just been incredibly successful, but it hasn't always been easy. And where this brings me today, the reason why I think it's really powerful to tell this story now, and I'm excited to go back to listen to the first time I told the story, and this episode, maybe I'll do this every year, every couple years, is that now I'm at a point where I've really gone through what I think every entrepreneur goes through, which is the first stage of business, which is built on part passion and part hustle and survival mode. And as much as I teach mindset and frequency and energy and human design, and that is why I've had the success that I've had, is following all of those principles. I'm also an entrepreneur, very ambitious, Midwestern entrepreneur who has also gotten into some habits of being in a little bit of the fight or flight energy, a little bit of the hustle energy, a little bit of the forcing and pushing, and being in the frequency of just constantly needing to work and achieve. And I found myself in my business at a certain point last year, I would say, where I was getting sick a lot. I had so many clients. I I had no downtime. I was working 7 days a week, and I built it to that point because I love it. I love coaching. I love working. I love my business. I love my clients. I love teaching. I love being busy. But I had started to notice some resentment for my beautiful thing that I built, and I noticed myself getting exhausted, and I noticed myself, no matter how much money I made and no matter how successful I was, like, just never feeling like it was enough and continuously having to fight and push, and kind of lost the plot a little bit. And then I experienced some failures and some really hard things personally and professionally that I've talked about a little bit, and some things that I may never talk about. And I realized some things need to change, and I got to get back to the basics, and I got to get back to, and not even really get back to, but like I need to evolve into this next state of my business, because I want to scale and I want to build this sustainable, beautiful business for my entire career, for as long as I'm blessed and privileged to live. And I couldn't keep going at the pace I was going at, even though I loved it, and my clients were getting amazing results and everything was going great, but I wasn't the refreshed and passionate and connected coach, because I was running on fumes. I was just doing too much. I wasn't honoring my human design. I wasn't living the things that I was originally teaching and sharing, because I had almost like gotten swept up and carried away in this thing that was just so fun and good. But like now I'm at a new stage and a new phase and a new level of maturity of knowing who I want to be and where I want to go and how I want to serve you. And things have to look a little bit different. And I think if you're lucky, you get here in business. I think a lot of people continue down the hustle and the forcing and the pushing because it does work and it can make you very successful. And I've had a really hard time not just continuing on that path, because it works. It really does. It works to do it that way. It does create results, but at what cost? And so now I'm at a point where really the trip to Europe, the month-long trip to Europe, is where so much change. I have a brand new website. You need to check it out, gretaerdl.com. I refined my offers, which you can look at under the Work With Me tab. I'm having this Jupiter return, my astrology, just like so many things have shifted in the background. And then just taking the month, it wasn't really a month off, but it was a month away from doing coaching calls. It was a month away from my regular routine in a totally different environment. I'm working with a new coach. I'm working with a new strategy. Like, so many things have been changing in the background to get me to this point where I am today, which is where this story continues and where you're on a journey with me from here on out, and where I'm really excited about my vision and building my vision and my dream in a way that isn't for anybody else except for me to be the coach that I want to be, and to serve my clients in the way that I want to serve them, and to show up for the people in the way that I want to show up, where I'm giving them my very best. I'm giving you my very best, and where I'm able to serve the people that I really truly want to work with, who are really truly open and receptive to this deep work, and to be really careful about who gets to be my one-on-one client, and having boundaries in a new way, and running my mastermind in a new way, and I have a new thing that I'm creating that will give you an opportunity to work with me in a new way. And so I've refined my business model. I refined my energy. I refined who I'm going to be in this next phase while I scale my business to the next level. And it's amazing. And it's been scary. I've had so many breakdowns. I've had so much fear. I've had so much like anxiety in the middle of the night. And I've worked through a lot of it. And I would say, as I record this podcast today, I've never felt more excited, more confident, more certain that this is going to be the best chapter yet. And I feel so grateful for everyone who has been part of my journey. My parents, my husband, he is the freaking backbone of my business, of our retreats, for Rosie, for my friends and my clients, past, present, and future, and for all of you, for the listeners here on this show, because I couldn't be here without this community and without the people who are here to help continue to create a ripple out into the world. And so that is a little bit about me and where the story is today. And this is really fun. This was really fun to reflect on this. And so now I would love to invite you to keep going deeper, to continue on my journey and to learn how to create a wildly aligned, successful life for yourself that feels as good as it looks. And to move, what I really help you with is to move from overthinking and doubting yourself and trying to perform and fit into other people's boxes and achievement addiction to self-trust and knowing who you really are and being your most authentic self by relating to yourself as a spiritual being who is on a spiritual path and helping you to clear away all the parts of you that are no longer serving you, that aren't really you, to reveal the truest version of who you are, to reveal your destiny path, and to help you up level and upgrade and raise your standards in that process, which might look like shifting relationships and friendships and jobs, and maybe adding something new in, like new passions, new hobbies, new ways of doing things, new mindset. I really help you shift your perspective, shift your identity, shift how you show up through shifting your thoughts, your feelings, your frequency, which is your life, because your relationship with yourself is the most important relationship you have. It's who you have to the end. It's you and you. And you got to get good with you. And if you aren't good with you, if you're feeling stuck, if things are feeling off, if you know you're meant for more, don't just stuff that away and pretend that that push isn't there. You got to do something about it, because otherwise you'll get a wake-up call. You just will. And so if you know I'm ready for support, I know I'm meant for more, I'm sick of being the strong one all the time, I'm sick of putting myself last, and I want to invest in getting support, getting guidance, taking action to shift your mindset to become the person you know you came here to be, then it's time to get help. It's time to work with me. It's our time. Okay, so there are 2 ways to work with me right now. One is kind of the do-it-yourself method, which is to do my Kundalini Yoga course, create your daily Kundalini Yoga practice. I guess 3 ways. And that's, you can instant lifetime access, learn Kundalini Yoga, learn the system that completely changed my life, and start your practice and do it at home and do it every day. It's under $600. You buy it, you get instant access. There's even a 2-month payment plan. It's amazing. That is where I would start. That is the program that absolutely changed my life. And it's where I started. And I created it for people who just want to do it on their own and don't have the time, energy, money, whatever it is to invest in coaching. Just start with Kundalini Yoga and do it every day. And I promise you it'll change your life. And then you can go on a retreat. And I have 2 retreats available. One is almost sold out. It's in Sayulita, Mexico, over Dios de los Muertos. I will drop the link. It's the Rooted and Rewritten retreat. Or we have a couples retreat in February over Valentine's Day and President's Day weekend. So definitely do that if you're in a relationship and you want to develop a more passionate, spiritually driven relationship and just have a really awesome, badass trip with a bunch of cool couples in Sayulita, Mexico, which is the coolest place ever. Then you can join one of those retreats. Or I have just a couple of spots left for one-on-one highest self private coaching. And this is the most high touch, transformational opportunity to work with me one-on-one. And if you're one where you, like me, I love a one-on-one container. I love having time set aside for me. Very specifically, we would meet every other week. So we would meet and then you'd have a week to integrate and do the work. And then we'd meet the next week. You'd have space to integrate and do the work. And then you get unlimited access to me between calls. And you come in, maybe you just know you're not on your right path, or maybe you've just been like really work focused and work obsessed and in autopilot and on the hamster wheel, and you want to live with more purpose, more intention. You want to maybe like create a side hustle, or you're going through a transition, or maybe you have a successful business, but you're not really feeling successful in it. Like your mindset is off. Maybe you are somebody who's trying to attract a romantic relationship in your life. Look, this is spiritual coaching. This is spiritual life coaching. So I can help you with literally anything and everything by helping you shift your thoughts, helping you shift your energy, helping you shift what you attract by changing who you are. That is how coaching works. And week after week, month after month, you become somebody who can hold the thing that you really want. But it doesn't work the other way around. You can't just change your jobs or get the partner or move and expect you to change. You take yourself with you. So if you want a more successful, satisfying, peaceful, purposeful life, you got to start by changing your relationship with you. And the best way to do that is through one-on-one coaching. And so I'm going to drop the links for all that of the above in the show notes. And all you're going to do is go, if you're not sure, just go to GretaErdl.com and inquire. Go to the contact page and just inquire, or go to the work with me page and inquire, and we'll hop on a call if you're the right fit, and we'll talk about the different ways in which we can work together. And I would absolutely love to invite you into my world and invite you into your spiritual upgrade, like the real deal with me one-on-one every week. It's so amazing. And all my clients are getting insane results, and it's the best. So thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you for listening to my story. Thank you for being here today and watching me today. If you've been watching me on YouTube, it's so funny. Like, I'm recording this with me talking, but it's like, I'm not actually looking at myself. Like, I had to minimize it and just do it, like, because I don't need to like look at myself the whole time. I actually pull myself. So I am looking at myself now. But thank you for being here. I love you so much. If you think a friend would resonate with my story or with working with me, feel free to send this along to them. And I'm sending you so much love, and I'll talk to you next week. Bye. Hold up. Before you go, would you love a free 8-minute evening meditation that you can play before bed to relax your nervous system and program your subconscious mind for greater abundance and positivity? This meditation is recorded to 777 hertz, which is a very special frequency that helps you to attract luck and connect with your most authentic self. I usually only give this to my one-on-one clients, but if you leave a review, take a screenshot and email it to greta@gretaerdl.com. I'll send you a copy. I really appreciate your support, and I'll talk to you later. Bye now.